Hey everybody, it's PartyElite, and with the Steam Summer Sale kicking off, it's time to once again scour through endless pages of huge discounts that may or may not be worth it. As usual, I'm here to save you some time and energy with a list of strategy, city building, sim, and management games that are well worth picking up. If you have any recommendations of your own, feel free to drop them in the comments down below, and if this video helps you find something you like, consider hitting the like button. Now, with no more time to waste, and with timestamps down below, let's begin. Anno 1800 is currently 75% off, available for just $20, and you may have skipped it at launch because Ubisoft decided not to release it on Steam, but now's a great time to pick up this absolute gem of a city builder. Set during the titular 1800s, you can either play through a narrative single-player campaign that pits you against those that would do your estate harm, taking you through the advancing technological capabilities of the era as you build up your city, explore the new world, establish trade routes, and do battle on the high seas. That aside, there's an excellent sandbox mode and a multiplayer mode, both of which see you pit against either the AI or your friends, each establishing cities of your own on an archipelago, spreading from island to island, building trade routes between them to send much-needed goods from where they're produced to where they're processed or otherwise consumed. Eventually, you'll explore and exploit the unique resources of the New World too, opening up a whole slew of new relevant structures and production chains to match. Anno 1800 boasts some truly complex supply and production chains for everything from soap to electricity, and you'll find yourself constantly challenged to meet the needs of your ever-growing population spread across multiple strata of society, each with their own wants. You'll build massive modular zoos and museums to display what your intrepid explorers find on their perilous journeys. You'll establish massive fleets to move goods around and protect them from those who would do your trade empire harm, and to that end, you'll engage with pirates and other factions alike, trading goods with them at times, and at others, cannon fire. Conquer and subjugate islands developed by your opponents, establish alliances to do so together, or progress as a lone wolf in a time of great change. Anno 1800 remains the pinnacle of this style of city-building game, and just writing this description out makes me want to dive back into it because of just how great an experience it is, start to finish. The DLC adds quite a bit to the base game, and I can highly recommend picking it all up too, but at the current price tag, the base game is absolutely worth grabbing. IXION is currently 35% off, available for just $30, and it must be one of my favorite narrative experiences in the genre in recent years. Channeling the somewhat dystopian vibes of games like Frostpunk, you're put in charge of a space station on a mission to find a new home for humanity, with all hope for survival on Earth lost. The story takes you on an interstellar journey that makes you question the very definition of humanity. It makes you wonder at every turn, slowly unveiling great mysteries and leaving some questions unanswered in a very satisfying way. A colony management game at its core, IXION has you establishing residential spaces, factories, refineries, infirmaries, food supplies, so on and so forth, as you manage the spread of your workers and resources across multiple, separate sectors of your station. You'll balance people's happiness and trust in you as the administrator of the station. You'll try to optimize the workload across sectors, and you'll try... well, I can't say more without spoiling some very interesting story beats. The developers have continued to make improvements to the gameplay experience based on feedback at launch, and I enjoyed the base game back then, so it's only gotten better since. Each chapter has a unique spin that keeps gameplay feeling fresh, even when you're several hours in, and I honestly cannot recommend this game enough. Warhammer 40k Chaos Gate Daemonhunters is currently half off, available for just $26, and it's probably my favorite turn-based tactics game to come out in recent years. Prior knowledge of the Warhammer 40k universe is absolutely not essential, and I know that can turn many people away, but this time you can set those concerns aside since the game does a decent enough job of throwing you into the action, telling you who the bad guys are, and asking you to shoot. That's not to say it's a simple game, not by any stretch of the imagination. You'll be flying from planet to planet in the hopes of putting an end to a plague that's been spreading across the sector, and in your employ, you'll have a multitude of biologically modified super soldiers, space marines. Spread across multiple classes, they'll each have their own strengths and weaknesses, and you'll be in charge of leveling them up, requisitioning equipment for them, and kitting them out in all manner of over-the-top tools of the trade befitting the Warhammer 40k universe. The strategic layer has you performing research, unlocking new abilities, and otherwise weighing the pros and cons of each outing as you try not to get overwhelmed by escalating threats. The tactical layer introduces a bunch of interesting and fresh mechanics to the genre, and the game doesn't hesitate to kick you to the curb and keep kicking. With permadeath enabled, even for your super soldiers, the game is extremely challenging on harder difficulties especially, but not in a way that feels overtuned or joyless. I've had an absolute blast playing Daemonhunters, from the compelling narrative to the great varieties of enemies, equipment, and randomly generated missions, to all of the fresh ideas the game actually brought to the genre. It's been a ton of fun. Timberborn is currently 20% off, available for just about $25, and it's a real pleasure to play. A colony management game that puts you in charge of a bunch of beavers, Timberborn really takes a special approach to the genre, doubling down on what would make a beaver-based colony builder game unique. The flow of verticality, water, and seasons, for example, are key mechanics around which many other systems are built, and though seasons might sound like a typical thing for a game like this, the exact ways in which you have to worry about them are suitably different here. I don't think I'll ever forget my first time playing Timberborn, where I spent a fair bit of time damming a section off to optimize electricity generation, only to eventually make a slight mistake and flood my entire colony, leaving the beavers to starve and die out. This so-called lumber punk game is as complex as it is cute, asking you to consider tech trees and workplace management, as well as the verticality of your city, the happiness of your beavers, and the supply of everything they might need or want. The game's been receiving constant updates too, with the latest major patch at the time of writing adding a significant number of new resources and buildings to allow for new types of products from coffee to canola oil, alongside new monuments and decorations as well. The way distribution of resources works is also a bit of a puzzle of its own, but the game never feels frustrating or overbearing in any way. The learning curve is perfect, the flow of updates is excellent, there are multiple factions to choose from, each with their own unique twist, and whether you're familiar with the genre or a newcomer, you're pretty much guaranteed to have a damn good time. Old World is currently 25% off, available for just $30, and it brings with it a unique twist on the Civilization-like 4X gameplay systems. Built around characters and a massive pool of events, you'll develop your nation as an individual, managing your relations with other people within your nation and foreigners alike, concerning yourself with your family tree and inheritance and the implications of assigning somebody a specific role in your court or putting them in charge of one of your armies. Even diplomacy takes place in the form of interpersonal relations. Beyond just arranging marriages and dealing with illicit affairs, you'll see opportunities come and go based on event chains and conversations in a way that I don't think I've ever seen before Old World. This isn't the only innovation here, mind you. The tech tree has a certain element of randomization to it, keeping things reasonable but interesting as far as technological progression is concerned, and orders themselves are actually a resource in a way I've never seen before. A clever way to show the bureaucratic cost of a growing empire, where you only have a limited number of orders available to spread across all your armies, forcing you to think with more foresight when you find yourself at war with your neighbors or setting up for one. Internal strife is also very interestingly modeled as you try to balance the multiple families within your own nation, trying to balance who gets governorship over which city, providing benefits depending on a variety of factors, while also pondering over the political positions each are rewarded, trying to ensure none gets infuriated to the point of splintering off with the cities and units under their control, putting your reign at risk. There are a lot of interesting ideas in Old World that I'd like to see more 4X titles explore, and this game is well worth experiencing for yourself. Steel Division 2 remains my favorite World War II game of recent years, currently 75% off and available for just $13. It boasts some excellent single-player gameplay across multiple historical campaigns set on the Eastern Front, controlling a multitude of battalions on a turn-based strategic map to engage in real-time tactical battles at a scale you rarely see in these kinds of games. The multiplayer experience is really something else, where you can play through the campaign in co-op mode, or where you can skirmish with up to 10 players on either side, fighting for control in a few different game modes. Either way, you'll be using a huge number of historically accurate units, each with their own stats, strengths, and weaknesses, and that's where a huge part of the fun in a game like Steel Division 2 is, where you're trying to find the perfect tool for the task, but rather than a simple rock, paper, scissors system, There are complex relationships that take into consideration armor thickness on each side of a vehicle, the penetrative capabilities of weapons firing at them, the range differences, line of sight, terrain, height advantage, so on and on and on. There are so many moving parts. Even in single player, the game is an absolute joy, with multiplayer being the cherry on top. Rarely does a game like Steel Division 2 get released, and the staying power has been immense, with great DLC adding more factions to build your armies from. With a deck building element that allows you to specialize or generalize your troops, each skirmish against the AI or in multiplayer with friends starts with you picking one of your decks and then spending points during the battle, accumulated over time, to bring in reinforcements from said deck. It's not a deck building game in the sense of random chance or anything like that, but that aspect does add a strategic element beyond the battlefield, even in skirmishes. I've recommended Steel Division 2 many times, and I'll recommend it many more. It's worth the full price tag, so on sale, it's a must-have. 2 Point Campus is currently 33% off, available for just $28, and it's full of great moments reminiscent of the old Theme Tycoon games like Theme Hospital and Theme Park, and it's actually the follow-up game from 2 Point Studios, who brought us 2 Point Hospital. I had a lot of fun with 2 Point Campus, and its DLC adds even more to explore as you try to educate the young citizens of the world in all manner of important things like knighthood, wizardry, so on and so forth. There's also less grounded topics like the culinary arts and robotics. The sense of humor in the game is a big part of its selling point, but don't let the tongue-in-cheek nature detract from the very real management that you have to deal with, ensuring your students are all happy, attending all of their classes, and passing them with the help of private tutors, proper supplies, and on-campus opportunities that keep them engaged. Your staff needs to be properly engaged and trained as well, of course, asking you to manage multiple different sets of wants and needs, as well as salaries, fees, timetables, and threats from competitors alike. From extracurriculars to the curriculars themselves, there's a lot to keep you busy and entertained, and if you like those old tycoon games from back in the day, 2 Point Campus is definitely one to try, especially at this price. Desperados 3 is currently 50% off, available for just $20, and I can't express enough how much of a steal this game is at that price. I would pay full price for it, even today, so many years after its release, because it is the pinnacle of stealth tactics gameplay. The developers, Mimimi Games, are currently developing a more fantastical stealth tactics game, so if you're one with more of an inclination towards historical settings, there's still great value here in Desperados 3. It's not about to become obsolete. As a stealth tactics game, you'll be put in charge of multiple characters, each with their own strengths and weaknesses, and you'll be charged with finding synergies between them to tackle all manner of increasingly challenging scenarios which, you guessed it, require stealth and tactical thinking. Whereas one character might be able to flirt and distract guards, another is able to set bear traps and bait enemies into them with a whistle, and another still is able to snipe distant foes or otherwise poison them. To be fair, there's a bit of fantasy here too, with one specific character who has access to literal voodoo magic, but even that doesn't break the overall experience of a great story that acts as a prequel to the Desperados series. So, yes, you can play Desperados 3 without having played any of the other Desperados games, and it is well worth the time. Each level is so beautifully designed, both in terms of look and systems, and there are many ways to sneak or fight your way through them. The game does an excellent job of making you feel clever when you pull off the various challenges and optional objectives littered around the levels, and I often find myself wanting to go back and play more. I can and will always highly recommend Desperados 3. Victoria 3 is currently 20% off, available for just $48, and though it can be somewhat divisive among fans of Victoria 2 especially, and understandably so, I've enjoyed my time with it tremendously. It's a grand strategy game with a truly different take on things, set during the Victorian era, focused on the socio-political and economic strife and change that dominated the time period. You can play as one of many nations spread across the globe, from the European superpowers of the time to their business enterprises or even smaller nations struggling to hold on to their independence. While some sets of nations feel a little similar to play for the time being, the sandbox nature of the game leaves options open as you manage the prosperity of the various political interest groups in your nation, each looking to push for reforms to laws and policies that best suit their needs, willing to trigger revolutions and rebellions if allowed to grow too powerful or too upset. You'll carefully manipulate what your economy is built on, as each type of industry and building that feeds it employs different strata of society, enriching or impoverishing them based on market demands, profits, dividends, and more besides. This focus on being an economic simulator and how that foundation can change the flow of society is something I find really compelling, and you can use the systems in place to do everything from creating a theocratic communist state to a xenophobic capitalist one to a progressive absolute monarchy and much more besides. The biggest sticking point for this game has been about how it handles war. I find it to be interesting enough, to be honest. It's got some room for improvement, but truth be told, everything else here is just so good and worth sinking your teeth in. I think it's well worth getting. You can check out my playthrough and beginner's guide if you want a better understanding of all the complex systems in the game before you grab it, but keep in mind that there have been some fairly sizable updates made to the game since then, changing how certain core systems work for the better. Victoria 3 is a bunch of fun, and I can highly recommend picking it up. Marvel's Midnight Suns is currently 60% off, available for just $32, and it honestly got shafted on release. I'm not going to say it's a perfect game, and it's certainly not worth full price with all of its issues. The slower parts of the game could use some refining, especially when it comes to the third-person exploration elements where a strange design decision was made. But the way Marvel's Midnight Suns approaches card-based, turn-based tactical combat is much better than I first would have guessed, putting you in control of these insanely powerful individuals in a way that balances out the power imbalance that would realistically be in place. The game has suitable punch to its animations and sound design, and you can have some real fun playing as some pretty great characters from Blade to Wolverine and more. Finding synergies between their abilities, using the environment to your advantage, and taking on some great villains is a really fun experience, and it really is quite unfortunate how a few bad systems here and there seem to overpower the conversation. Again, I won't deny that the game has issues. Microtransactions are always annoying even when they're not pay to win. They're just cosmetic here, and like I said, the exploration elements are not the greatest, but at the current price point, the combat has some very fun systems to engage with that you might find yourself enjoying more than you expect. But there you have it, folks. Some great games to pick up on sale this summer. If you have any recommendations of your own, drop them in the comments down below, and if this video helped you find something you like, again, consider hitting the like button. For more strategy gaming news, reviews, previews, let's plays, and more, don't hesitate to subscribe. And as always, a massive thanks goes out to all of the channel members and patrons who've been supporting the channel on a monthly basis. Y'all keep us alive and running smoothly. And of course, a big old thanks goes out to each and every one of you for watching. Until next time, cheers.